Hello, today we are going to be talking about area of circles. So the area formula for a circle is capital A, so A stands for area, pi r squared. So notice how yesterday we had a formula with the letter D in it because we had diameter, but notice how this time we only need the radius. There is not a formula that we can use that would have diameter in it. So the main thing that you guys need to know with area of circles is if you are given diameter, you have to find the radius first, then you can start plugging numbers into your formula and solving, okay? So let's do the first one. So find the area of each circle, use 3.14 for pi, round each answer to the 10th place value. Alright, so the first one here, notice how the 2 inches is represented by the line that's going halfway through the circle. So they do give us the radius here, so we don't have to do anything with that. So we write down the formula, so A equals pi r squared, so area equals pi times the radius squared. And we're just going to start substituting numbers in. So for pi, they want us to use 3.14, so I'm going to substitute 3.14 in for pi. R is radius, and notice how the radius is 2, and then we are going to square that. So remember PEMDAS, you always want to follow PEMDAS rules. So the first thing we should do is multiply our exponents here. So 2 squared, you have a squared key in your calculator, or remember 2 squared just means 2 times itself 2 times, so that would give you 4. And then your last step is to multiply it times the 3.14. And rounding to the nearest 10th place, that would give us 12.6. And we do need to label here. So remember area, you would do inches cubed, or sorry, squared. Okay. So let's try the next one. So again, they give us radius, which that's what we want. We want r in the formula. So we will keep our formula as pi r squared. And we will keep 10 alone. And we can start substituting numbers into the formula. So again, they want us to use 3.14 for pi. Our radius, in this case, is 10. So we're going to plug in 10 for r, and we will square that. Alright, so again, following PEMDAS rules, we need to square first. So 10 squared, or in other words, 10 times 10 is 100. And then we will just multiply that times 3.14, and we get 314. So our answer is 314 meters squared. Alright, and then the next one says D is 5, so D stands for diameter, so that means that we have a line that goes all the way through the center of the circle, that's 5. But remember, notice how the formula, we don't want D, we want R. So if you guys remember, to get the radius from the diameter, okay, diameter is the line that goes all the way through, radius would just be half of that. So to get half of 5, just take 5 divided by 2, and that will tell us what our radius is. So 5 divided by 2 gives us 2.5. So our radius, I'm going to cross this out, and I'm going to put radius equals 2.5. Because again, we don't want diameter, we need R. Alright, so now that we have the radius, we can now start substituting numbers into our formula and solving. So pi is 3.14. Radius, we just found out to be 2.5. And then we are going to square that. Alright, so following PEMDAS rules, we need to do 2.5 squared first. And that is 6.25, and then you just multiply that times the 3.14, and rounding this to the nearest 10th place would give us 19.6 kilometers squared. Alright, next part is we are going to use 22 over 7 for pi. So instead of plugging in 3.14, we're going to plug in 22 over 7. So look at the first one. So they tell us that our radius is 14 centimeters, and looking at our formula of area equals pi r squared, we do want the radius, so that's good news. So once I write down the formula, I can now just start substituting numbers into the formula. So now they want us to use 22 over 7 for pi. So instead of 3.14, you're just going to plug in 22 over 7 for pi. Radius, they tell us, is 14, and then we're going to square that. All right, so remember, every calculator is different with your fraction key. Mine looks like this. A lot of your guys' calculators have a ABC button, so that would be your fraction key. So just ask your teacher if you guys need help finding your calculator, or your fraction key on your calculator. So following PEMDAS, first thing we need to do is 14 squared. So 14 times 14 gives us 196. And then remember, we're not using 3.14 anymore. We're now using 22 over 7. So I'm just going to take that 196 times my fraction of 22 over 7. And notice how we get 616. So this will be 616 centimeters cubed. Sorry, squared. Alright, look at the next one. So now they tell us diameter is 2.5. So we don't want diameter, remember we want radius. So if they give us the line that goes all the way through and we want to get the radius, just take that number divided by 2. So 2.5 divided by 2 would give us 1.25. So radius equals 1.25 meters. And now I can use my formula and start substituting my numbers in. Okay, so pi is 22 over 7. R is radius, which is 1.25, and we're going to square that. And just plug all that into your calculator. So 1.25 squared is 1.5625. And then multiply that times the 22 over 7. And we get this long decimal, so if we are rounding each answer to the nearest tenths place, look at the 9, look at the number behind it. If it's 5 or greater, you'll round it up. If not, you will leave it alone. So in this case, we're going to leave it as 4.9 meters squared. All right, and the last one, so here they tell us that our radius is 0.25 inches. So since we have the radius, we can now plug all of our numbers into our formula. So pi, they want us again to use 22 over 7. Radius is 0.25, and we're going to square that. And then just plug all of that in our calculator. So 0.25 squared is 1/16. And then multiply that times your 22 over 7. And you get 0.196. So rounding that to the nearest tenths is going to give us 0.2 inches squared. All right, so one thing that I did forget to mention, yesterday we talked about circumference, and that is talking about the amount of distance on the outside of the circle. Remember, area is talking about the amount of space on the inside. All right, so the last set of questions here, find the area of each circle, leave your answer in terms of pi. So when they say to leave your answer in terms of pi, that just means that you're not plugging anything into pi. You're not plugging in 3.14, you're not plugging in 22 over 7. You're just going to leave pi alone and then keep pi in your answer. Okay, so let's do a problem together. So again, when I'm using my area formula, I want the radius and not the diameter. So if they give us a diameter of 5, I need to cut it in half by dividing by 2 to get a radius of 2.5. And then now I can just start substituting in. So again, if they tell you to leave your answer in terms of pi, you are keeping pi in the substitution, and you are going to keep pi in your answer. So you're not plugging anything in. You are still going to plug in the radius, which is 2.5, and you're going to square it. So your answer here, so again, in your answer, you're going to keep pi, and then you're just going to take 2.5 squared. So your answer would be 6.25. Well, if I round it to the nearest tenths, it would be 6.3. So your answer would just be pi 6.3 millimeters squared. So again, keeping your answer in terms of pi, you're just simplifying everything else, but you're just leaving pi in there, okay? All right, so next one, so we have a radius of 0.06, which we want the radius, so we don't have to do anything with that number. Do my substitution, so leave my answer in terms of pi. That means I'm not substituting anything in for pi. My radius is 0.06, so I'm going to plug in 0.06 in for r, and now I'm going to square it. And then again, you're just going to keep pi in your answer and then just simplify the 0.06 squared. And this gives us 3.6 times 10 to the negative third. Let me see if I can. Okay, so this is going to give us 0.003. So you guys won't have one like this on your test, so we'll just write down that decimal. You guys will learn what this means next year in 8th grade. All right, so your answer here is just pi times that decimal, okay? All right, and then the last one, so we have a diameter of 4/5. Again, we don't want diameter, we want the radius, so we're just going to divide 2 from that 4/5. So 4/5 divided by 2 gives us 0.4, so we have a radius of 0.4. And it looks like our units was dm. Now that I have my radius, I can now just plug my numbers into my formula. We're going to leave pi in our answer, so I'm going to leave pi. Plug in our radius, which is 0.4, and I'm going to square it. And then again, in your answer, you're going to keep pi, and then just take 0.4 squared, and that would give us 0.16. Okay, so these are 3 different ways that you guys will see us incorporate pi. So for the most part, you're just going to be plugging in 3.14 in for pi. 22/7 is just another way to represent 3.14. We usually don't use that one as much. And then keeping your answer in terms of pi, we do have you guys use that one too. So I would just focus on the terms of pi and the 3.14. All right, so let's do some application problems. So the bottom of a circular swimming pool with a diameter of 30 feet is painted blue. How many square feet are blue? So we have a circular swimming pool, and it has a diameter of 30. So here's the bottom of my swimming pool. My diameter is 30, and it's painted blue. They're wanting to know how many square feet are blue. So when they're trying to figure out square feet, that just means that you are finding the area. Okay? So our area formula is A equals pi r squared. Pi, let's use 3.14. R is your radius, so notice how I am not going to plug in 30 for r because 30 is the diameter. So to get the radius, remember it's just half of that. So 30 divided by 2 would be 15. So I'm going to plug in 15 in for r, and then I'm going to square it. Okay, so do the exponent first. So 15 squared is 225, and then take that times 3.14, and you get a grand total of 706.5 square feet. So that's how much of the paint will be painted blue. All right, and the last one here, so find the area of the face of the New York State quarter with a diameter of 24 millimeters. Use 3.14 for pi and round to the nearest tenths if necessary. Okay, so we have a quarter, and it says that it has a diameter of 24, and they want us to find the area. So again, you guys will be given the area formula. You guys don't have to memorize it. So your area formula is pi r squared. They want us to use 3.14 for pi, so we're going to substitute 3.14 in. R is radius. Notice how they gave us the diameter, so that just means we need to take 24 divided by 2 to get our radius, and that would be 12, and then I'm going to square it. So 12 squared is 144, times 3.14 is 452.16, but they want us to round to the nearest tenths, so that would be the tenths place here where the 1 is. 6 is 5 or greater, so I'm just going to bump the 1 up to a 2. So this would be 452.2 millimeters squared. Moving on to the back side. So I want you guys to try out 5, 6, and 7. And then I know that it says to use 3.14 or 22 over 7. And how about you guys actually find the pi key on your calculator? So how about you use pi key to figure out your answer. And then I want you to round to the hundredths. Okay, so just practice. So again, every pi key on your calculator is different. Some of you guys might be able to see it right away. Mine, though, is above this times 10x. So if you guys notice, it's right here where the yellow is. So what I would have to do is I would have to hit my shift key. Some of you guys have a second key. So you'll just hit that shift key first, and then you'll hit your times 10x to get your pi symbol. Okay. So try to find your pi symbol and use it, and go ahead and find the area of these circles. So pause the video and then press play when you're ready for the answer. Okay, so you guys should be done with these, so let's see how you did. First thing you guys should have done was wrote the formula for all of them. So area equals pi r squared. And then you guys can start substituting your numbers in. So if you're using the pi key, you can just leave the pi symbol there. Just make sure your answer, you calculate it in. And then your radius for this one, they do give you the radius because it's halfway through. So that would be 3.5 squared. And then you just solve it. So again, I want you guys to use the pi key on this one. So we're going to take pi times, I need to do my exponent first. So 3.5 squared was 12.125. Now I can take it times pi. And we get this long decimal. So if I wanted you guys to round it to the nearest hundredths, you're looking at the hundredths place, which is the 8. Look at the number behind it to see if you should bump this up or not, which I'm not. So our answer is 38.48 meters squared. All right, next one. So again, if you're just using the pi key, just keep pi in your answer. R is radius, but notice how they gave us the diameter. So the diameter was 26. So remember, to get the radius, you just divide it by 2. So 26 divided by 2 would give us 13 as the radius. So I'm going to plug in 13 for R, and then I can just simplify. So 13 squared is 169. Multiply that times your pi key in your calculator, and you should get 530.929. So rounding to the nearest hundredths, look at the 2, look at the number behind it. If it's 5 or greater, we are going to bump it up, which in this case we are. So it's going to be 530.93 inches cubed. Alrighty, and the last one. So they gave us diameter, so I need to take this and cut it in half, so divide by 2. So 9 divided by 2 is going to give us 4.5. So again, I'm going to leave pi since I'm using the pi key. I'm going to plug in 4.5 in for my radius, and then we're just going to solve. So 4.5 squared is 20.25. times my pi key in my calculator, and we get 63.617. So if I round that to the nearest hundredths, it'd be 63.62 centimeters squared. Again, just another way that you guys can utilize your pi symbol, okay? All right, then the last part here, so these are some enrichment questions, so if you guys can understand these, then awesome job. So what they are doing is they give you the area. So in your formula, if they give you the area, you would plug in that number in for A. You are going to plug in 3.14 for pi like normal. And then for this question, they want you to find the radius. So again, this is just solving a basic equation. So if you want to get the radius by itself, the 3.14 and the r squared are multiplying, so the opposite of multiplying would be to divide it. So you would just divide 3.14 on both sides. You get 289 equals r squared. And then this is something that we talked about in quarter one. If you want to get the radius by itself, the opposite of squaring something is square rooting. So all that you would have to do to get the radius is just square root 289 and you would get 17. And again, every calculator is different, but here's my square root symbol. If I square root 289, again, that gives me that 17. All right, so let's just try some, okay? So find the radius and the diameter of the circle with the given area. Okay, so the first thing that we're just going to do is write down the formula for all of them. And then your area, if they give you A, you're just going to substitute that number in for A. And then again, they want us to use 3.14 for pi, so we're going to substitute 3.14 in for pi, and we're going to solve r squared. Okay, so just like up here, if you want to get r squared by itself, the first thing we need to do is divide that 3.14 over. So when you divide by 3.14 on both sides, your 3.14 cancel over here. You are left with r squared. And then we will take 254.34 divided by 3.14, and that gives us 81. And then we still need to get r by itself, so the opposite of squaring something is square rooting. So then you get r equals, and then the square root of 81 is 9. Okay. Then if they also want us to find the diameter, if you have a radius of 9, remember to get your diameter, all that you have to do is just multiply it by 2 and you get 18. So there are your two answers. Because remember, radius is half of the circle, diameter is the line that goes all the way through the circle. So if you have a radius of 9, just multiply it by 2 and that would give you the whole thing. Because you have two 9-inch radius, that would make 18. Or sorry, yeah, 18. All right, so let's try that again. So again, they give us the area, so plug that number in for A. Plug in 3.14 for pi, and now we're just going to solve for r squared. So first step, to get r by itself, we are just going to divide that 3.14 on both sides. Your 3.14s will cancel. We're left with r squared equals, and then 1962.5 divided by 3.14. Hope I did that wrong. There we go. We get 625. And then to get r by itself, you have to get rid of that squared sign. So the opposite of squaring something is square rooting. So if we were to take the square root of 625, we get 25. So 25 would be your radius, and then remember, if they also want the diameter, just take that 25 times 2, and your diameter would be 50. All right, so go ahead and pause the video and then try to do the last one on your guys' own, and then press play if you guys are ready for the answer. All right, so just like all the other problems, first step is to plug in this number in for A, because that is your area. Then plug in 3.14 for pi, and then we are looking for the radius, so it will be radius squared. First step is dividing that 3.14 on both sides. And we are left with r squared equals, and then if I were to take that 11.3354 divided by 3.14, we get 3.61. And then to get that radius by itself, the opposite of squaring something is square rooting. So we get r equals 1.9. Alright, and then they also want the diameter, so just take that 1.9 times 2, and you would get 3.8. So awesome, awesome job if you guys got that. Okay, again, this is like an enrichment. The main thing that you guys will need to know is just finding the area of the circles and knowing, reading directions and seeing what they want you to use. So do they want you to use 3.14? Do they want you to use 22/7? Keep pi in your answer or use the pi key. So just make sure that you guys are reading directions on what they want you to use. But that is it for today's lesson. So please let your teacher know if you have any questions. Thanks.